What's the reaction from Washington? Obviously, Governor Cuomo had become a national figure due to his response to the COVID-19 pandemic and his press conferences. At one point was rumored to be a consideration to replace Joe Biden on the Democratic ticket for president. Let's bring in Kevin Frey from Washington right now. He is covering our local lawmakers' reaction. Kevin, what are you hearing right now?
Well, I mean, certainly just to kind of go off of that point with Joe Biden, let's start with this. Something I just saw on Twitter, and I can't agree enough, is that this is kind of taking all of the oxygen out of the room for a day that was supposed to be quite big for Joe Biden. Obviously, his infrastructure bill, that bipartisan bill that he insisted could get done, just got through the Senate this morning, and now all anyone's going to be talking about across the country, quite frankly, at least on all the major cable networks, is this news of the day. Now, in terms of the response we're hearing in Washington, obviously all of our New York Democrats over the past week have called for Cuomo to resign. Some have been on the record calling for him to resign. Most of them had been on the record calling for him to resign months ago. In terms of the response we're seeing so far, let me just read off a few of them. Let's start with Senator Schumer, if we can. He said in a statement, "First, I want to commend the brave women who stepped forward and courageously told their stories. There is no place for sexual harassment, and today's announcement by Governor Cuomo to resign was the right decision for the good of the people of New York. I have full confidence that Lieutenant Governor Hochul will establish a professional and capable administration. I have spoken with Lieutenant Governor Hochul and look forward to working together to help the people of New York." Similar sentiments from the other senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand. She's saying in a statement, "First and foremost, I want to thank the incredibly courageous women who came forward and shared their stories. They are the true public servants here. New York now has a chance to move forward and build a new culture of leadership. Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul is an exceptional public servant and will be an excellent governor. I look forward to working together to continue serving the people of our great state." Across the aisle, Elise Stefanik, one of the top Republicans on the House side, sending out a statement quite quickly after the announcement from Governor Cuomo that he was going to step aside, saying in part that the resignation is long past overdue. Governor Cuomo needs to be arrested and prosecuted for sexual harassment, sexual assault, and sexual abuse. She has been beating that drum over the course of the past week. One other note here is the White House. Obviously, last week, Joe Biden called for Andrew Cuomo to resign from office. Obviously, he has done so, and we did hear from the White House spokesperson today that the president has not spoken to Governor Cuomo since the AG's report was released a week ago, and she also said that they were not given any heads up, no forewarning that this announcement was coming from Cuomo today. So that's just a smattering of the instant reaction we're getting here in Washington. But obviously, for New York Democrats that have been calling for him to resign, this is certainly something that they had been looking for.
Kevin, you kind of mentioned it there previously, but Joe Biden went out of his way to call Governor Cuomo the gold standard when it came to his response to COVID-19 in New York, and that's really what made, or at least contributed to Governor Cuomo becoming a national figure. What do you think it took so long for the White House to go ahead and make that judgment that they were kind of turning away from Governor Cuomo? I mean, they'd heard of these allegations before. They certainly had a chance to vet them before we saw the AG's report. Why do you think they waited?
Well, it's hard to exactly say one way or the other. I mean, certainly we saw a group of Democrats within the New York delegation as well, 3 Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, Tom Suozzi, Greg Meeks among them, who also held back on actually calling for resignation outright when you saw a lot of the New York Dems back in March make that claim. These were somewhat more establishment Democrats, shall we say, that were in that group calling for, or that were kind of holding off, saying we want to let this investigation play out. This allows probably the White House to now say, look, we allowed the due process to play out. That report is damning. Now we can turn to a calling for resignation. That seemingly was probably part of the thought process. It's also worth noting that Joe Biden and Andrew Cuomo have a long family history. Of course, he knew Cuomo from his time when he was working as part of the Clinton administration here in Washington in the 90s. Casey?
I guess before I let you go, does any of this stick to the president, his close relationship with Andrew Cuomo over the years, or do you think the public will move on pretty quickly from this?
Well, I mean, let's look at it this way. I was talking to some political analysts last week, because obviously the next big election coming up is going to be 2022, both in the state level and then also nationally speaking when we talk about the midterm elections. And those analysts basically said to me, look, it's still a year away. So one, a lot's going to happen between now and then that would have any electoral implications. It's more likely the picture of the economy, where the coronavirus is at that point. It's going to be playing in people's mind electorally, for instance. And then keep in mind, on top of that, the fact that all of these Democrats have come out, tried to separate themselves from him, basically says he needs to go away. That certainly kind of tries to deflect and removes them from any sort of lingering influence that he may have on the party. But, of course, we shall see.
All right, Kevin Frey live in Washington giving us national and our local lawmakers' reaction